All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the Pine Cellar Podcast. I am your host today, Sam Marie. Welcome back to another solo episode. How are we feeling about these? If we do hate listening to one person throughout a whole episode, just let us know in the comments because we'll find some guests. Maybe some of the Pine Room boys can come on and we can talk about their career and life choices. We could do that. We could definitely do that. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope everyone's having a wonderful week, a wonderful whatever day of the week it is for you. Hope April has been a good start to spring for y'all. April's certainly been a tough month, but hey, I am sticking true. Last solo episode, I talked about some things that I was going to do moving forward to kind of launch myself back into the new year, launch myself back into 2025, get back into some goals that I've been wanting to achieve. And so I started training for a 10K, and it's kind of up in the air. It is up in the air what I am going to plan on running. The goal, though, is to be able to run a 10K in about 2 months. We're maybe 3 weeks in, I believe. I haven't fully decided because there's no 10K here happening. Again, I thought the Ogden, where they do tough as nails and wheeling, I thought they had a 10K race, but come to find out they do not. They have the tough as nails, which is the obstacle courses plus running 7 miles or 8 miles throughout it. And then they also have the 5K. And I don't know what else they have. I would have to double check with Brian, but those are the two main races. So I don't know if I want to do tough as nails again just because of the obstacles. Not sure if it's for me or not to be jumping over things and running through water. Like I might just want to run and only run for peace of mind. But so I might do the 5K, and Brian and I might just put on our own little 10K, but we'll see. But it's going really good. I get home from work and I know I said I was going to do it before work, but it's literally dark and freezing out before I go to work, so I simply do nothing but eat breakfast and get moving for the day before work. And then I've been running after work. The training schedule that I'm on is 3 to 4 runs and then 2 functional workouts per week, which I'm mostly sticking to. The workouts that aren't runs, I haven't been super consistent with, but the running I've been very consistent with, doing 3 to 4 runs a week, and it's going really well. After I'm done running, I feel way more motivated. I can feel the endorphins. I've only been running again for about 3 weeks, and that runner's appetite is coming back in full force. I wake up every morning starving like I haven't eaten in weeks, which has not been something I've experienced for years now. That hunger, that severe appetite that comes with being so active and running so much. So that has been very helpful to making sure I'm eating enough throughout the day because I literally have to. I'm starving by the time I wake up. So I'm eating breakfast more often, or if I do miss breakfast, I'm having a protein shake. But I told Brian my biggest motivator for running is, as we know, I'm a big reader. And when I read, I put on different playlists specifically that are from dystopian movies or fantasy vibes to kind of set the scene for whatever book you're reading. And so what I've been doing is playing a playlist, one of those playlists to really insert myself, make me feel like I'm running from the enemy in a fantasy book or in the Hunger Games. The one I've been listening to the most is called POV, You're Reading the Hunger Games books. So that's what I've been listening to on those runs, and it keeps you motivated, especially during this time of the year when it's rainy outside. It's a little cloudy. It feels like the Twilight movie outside. It's a really great way to get your run in and forget that you're running. So that's what I've really been doing. And most of the time the runs take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. And yeah, it's really brightening my day. So I'm really enjoying it. I will be honest, as I've said before, journaling's been a hard thing for me to do. I haven't been doing it. I just I'll plan out a day here and there, but I haven't been consistent with that. So we'll go back to that. And then, I definitely been prioritizing hobbies. I've been posting a lot on TikTok for Pine Cellar and just my own TikTok account. Been working on this podcast and been reading a lot. I started a new fantasy series, The Serpent and Wings of the Night. I believe the series name is Crown of Nyaxia series, but it's like a vampire romantasy series. So that's what I'm reading right now. And then I picked up another little romance called The X-Vows by Jessica Joyce, and I'm reading that just throughout the work week while I'm busy, because I feel like fantasy books require a little bit more brain power, a little bit more focus, and I don't like that during the week. So I'm going to save the third book in that series for this weekend because I don't have any major plans. We're not traveling this weekend, and I'll probably binge it on Saturday or Sunday. So something to look forward to. But yeah, that's how that quarter year slump turnover is going for me. I'm really only falling and failing on one of them, and that's the journaling. But well, we have time. Again, 2025 is not over. But April has been a crazy start. To me kind of turning around and getting out of this quarter year slump. It's been a crazy time. I'm grateful that I started these habits a little bit before, so that way I have those goals and that motivation and that excitement to kind of focus on. Brian and I, this last weekend, we have a home down in North Carolina that we rent out because we were going to be living there, and then Brian got this promotion, and so we moved up this way. And so we had purchased a home there, and just the way the market was, it didn't really make sense to sell it, so we've been renting it out instead. There was some mistakes made in the process of finding a renter for that specific home. It was about the time my mom had been diagnosed that we were having all this change, and I didn't help so much in the process, and so Brian took on a lot of it on his own, which is a lot to do on your own, and so we weren't really working on a team on that project, and it showed that we failed in our teamwork because the person that we chose was probably not a great ideal candidate, but they were evicted after about 4 months of rent missed, but the eviction process started at that 2-month point, but it just takes a while to evict somebody from your home. So we went through the court process. Brian represented us in court because I couldn't go because of work, but he was able to take a day off and get down there and go represent himself in court and got our home back. However, we're still short those 4 months of rent, and the home was destroyed. It was truly, it sounds so dramatic, and it's certainly a privileged standpoint to be in, to have a second home that is rented. However, you know, we're not this big corporation. We don't have all this money to supply when somebody does do something like that. So we're short that rent, and then we are also short the damages. There's thousands of dollars in damages. Not just like, oh, we had to clean. No, we had to get pest control because apparently they're called German roaches. But there were German roaches in the home, which was super cool. It was, of course, filthy as well, but they left a lot of things there. They left the couches, they left dressers, they broke the handrail, they broke the oven. Again, bugs, clothes. I've never really gloved up to clean because I've only ever cleaned my own living space. And of course, my own living space has never really been so disgusting. I've never lived like that before. I've always cleaned up after myself. And so we gloved up. We made a funny little TikTok as a result because we had these like big pink rubber gloves, but we were gloved up to clean stuff because we'd pick up stuff and 20 roaches would go crawling everywhere, which was terrifying. I've never seen that many roaches before, but yeah, it was heartbreaking to walk into a home that you worked hard for, you purchased, you took care of. It was maybe one of the first homes I've ever really felt like I was at home. It was the first home Brian and I got to live in together. My dad was living there and he was happy and healthy. It was also a time before my mom was diagnosed with colon cancer. And so it was just the memories that house holds are very like precious and near and dear to my heart. So going into that home, it's such a special place that we had created, and to see it just trashed was a little heartbreaking. I cried quite a few times in the process of cleaning, but it's okay. We're on the up. Well, we're going to be on the down a little bit, and then we'll be back on the up. But good things got to be coming soon. But so, yeah, we spent the day cleaning. We didn't get as much done as we hoped we would. But again, there was so much emotion involved in it that I couldn't bring all of my cleaning skills to the table because, I was upset over it. So that was this past week. And then today I went to work. I do home health, but I do in-home health evaluations. So I'm just like evaluating the home, evaluating the patient's just general health, making sure there's no obvious red flags, red signs for anything. And if there is, getting those taken care of. You do run a personal safety risk doing home health. Sometimes I go out to places where I have no service. It's 5 miles out in the boonies. Nobody's coming to get me or hearing from me. Your iPad that you chart everything on tracks your specific location. It doesn't track your specific location when you're that far out. But I really haven't had too many issues. I haven't had any major safety issues. But today I did. You always call before you go in. A lot of these places, they don't always show up on GPS, so it'll get you so far, but then you need the what color is your house, what kind of cars are parked outside, just so I know I'm in the right place. And so I called them, and they didn't answer the first time, but they answered the second time, and we were speaking on the phone, and they said, sure, it's okay if you come, if you don't mind talking to me while I'm eating. And I said, oh no, of course, that's fine, as long as you don't mind. And then I just giggled a little bit. Just sometimes I giggle in conversation. I don't know. It flowed. It was a normal conversation. If it was going to upset them, I could go to somebody else's home first and then come back to their home if they didn't want me there while they were eating, which is totally okay, totally reasonable. But yeah, so I had giggled on the phone. They had responded with a weird maniacal, manic type of laugh giggle. The line goes dead because I'm in shock because it sounds like this person is perhaps mocking me, or maybe they didn't like the way I had spoken. Maybe something got confused over the phone line. I don't know. But I didn't have a response immediately. And then they responded okay, we could just giggle on together. And then I was like, okay, I'll see you soon then. And they said, okay. And we hung up. And so I drive up to the house. It's 2-3 miles out of normal general population. We're out there in the farms, beautiful homes, but we're certainly out there. And I pull up, and it's kind of like a log cabin type of style, but a big decent home. Somebody spent money on it at some point. But so I went and knocked on the door, rang the doorbell, and somebody starts yelling. They're like, who are you and who are you from? What are you doing here on my property? What are you doing here on my land? Yelling, interrogating. I'm barely getting time to answer. I'm like, hi, I'm so-and-so from this. We just got off the phone. I'm here to do this, this, and this. And they're like, well, who sent you? You better tell me who sent you. And they're just yelling, interrogating me. And I'm scared. And I said, you know what? It's a little bit of a back and forth, but it's getting more aggressive and more agitated. And I'm a little bit worried and scared and frightened for my life. So I was like, I gotta grab something from my car. I'll show it to you, whatever, but I gotta go. So I get in my car and I'm leaving though, because I am out there by myself. I can report if there's any safety concerns to a higher up, but my own personal safety does have to come first at times. I'm not ready to die here at 27. To get shot because somebody doesn't remember that we just spoke on the phone. The worst part too was I couldn't easily pull out of this driveway. I had to do a 3-point turn to get out of there, and they're running out of the door at me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go. But I safely got out of there and then let work know and everything. But so that is what the last week has looked like for me. That's what the last week has looked like for me, if anybody was interested in knowing. So how am I doing? Fine? Questionable? So the reason I brought you all here today is to talk about PA school and how I got into PA school, what that application process looks like. Going from graduating your undergrad and headed into your master's or whatever graduate program, doctorate is definitely a scary, uncertain time. There are so many things that feel so overwhelming to get done in order to get to that point. But I promise you will get through it. Take your time. You have time, whether or not you think you do. So I just kind of was going to share that process, what it looked like for me. But yeah, so starting college, I went to WVU. I went to WVU for one reason only, and that was in-state tuition, and it was the cheapest amongst those colleges that would be in-state that I could get into, get covered with promise and blah, 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 blah. It was totally a financial decision, had nothing to do with literally anything else. Of course, I had a lot of friends going there too, which was nice and convenient. If I hadn't been worried about money, I probably would have went back down to North Carolina at that point for school. But I just was making the decision financially, which I think is honestly the smartest decision you can make when it comes to school, is what are your options financially. So I went to WVU. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I come from parents who are 2 nurses, and there is this phenomenon, and I've talked about it before, but if you have healthcare parents, it's hard to know what other options there are for jobs other than healthcare. It's all you've known your whole life. Hearing about like people going to school for business and graphic design and all sorts of other things just sound unrealistic, even though they are not whatsoever unrealistic. But to me at the time, in my brain, my immature brain, and what I had known and been exposed to in life, it felt unrealistic, not possible. So the only thing I knew was, okay, I got to do something healthcare related. That's how I always have a job. That's how I get paid. That's how I live a successful lifestyle. That's all I knew. I had always been really good at math, and I loved math. And my great uncle had been teaching calculus to us our senior year. So he was really invested in somebody in the family heading into mathematics in some sort of way. So I started talking to him about school and other people, and it started getting recommended to me to do engineering. And I was like, okay, well, let me look at all the different types of engineering, because there's a million different engineering majors. And WVU is one of the top schools for engineering. At least I thought so at the time. Like, for example, the engineering school made the PRT, the transportation system there and everything. So it's, at least in this area, it's really looked up to in terms of its engineering program. So it has a lot of options for engineering. So I'm looking through them, and I find biomedical engineering, and I'm like, wow, this is a really cool way to combine the sciences and math with medicine. So subjects that I'm good at with something that I think is going to be sustainable for life. So I was like, this is literally perfect. I will do this. And then I went into school not having somebody personal, like a family relative who had been through a very traditional college process. My parents both did associates nursing programs. So you're not really picking your schedule. You're not really doing a traditional college situation when you go to your associates for nursing, and then they later got their bachelor's and such. But so I didn't have that example, and my brother didn't exactly do the traditional college lineup that you think of, and so I was really the first one to be doing it, so I didn't have anybody to get any feedback on. I got this terrible schedule made. Like, I'm like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, all the way till the end of the day. I'm back and forth between Evansdale campus, downtown campus, back and forth in WVU. And if you go to WVU, you know that's a mess. Like, you need to be on Evansdale on certain days, and then the downtown campus, like, you don't want to be back and forth throughout the entire day. And I'm also, a lot of the engineering stuff I'm doing is on the Evansdale campus, but I live in the downtown campus because that's where my friends had wanted to live. So that also didn't work, but my schedule was crazy and I was overworked, overwhelmed. And there's also this new financial burden that comes with going to school. And so there's a lot of different things going on. And then my parents separated for the first time while I was in well, I don't know why I said for the first time, but my parents had separated while I was right after I had left for freshman year of school. So you leave the house and then you see that separation. You kind of take a lot of blame on it for yourself because you're like, wow, if I would have stayed, would that have happened? So I had a hard first semester, as a lot of people do, of college, because it's such a massive transition. And I did not do as good as I was regularly used to doing in school. I got a C in calculus that year, and I was like, I literally just took calculus senior year, and I did good, and I did the AP exam and blah, 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 and now I'm retaking calculus because they recommend that you don't jump for your freshman year to calculus 2, especially the engineering programs. You take specific calculuses for engineering. You're not taking calculus with people who are not an engineering major. And so they recommend don't jump to Calc 2 just because you got the credits from your AP from Calc 1. Retake Calc 1. Yeah, retake it. So I got a C and I panicked. There was no reason for that panic, and if anybody's in their first year and they've gotten a C and you think the world is over, it's not. It is not over. You have so much more time to do other things, to learn, and a C is passing, and that's all you really need to do. If I'm being honest, when you're applying for jobs, they're not looking at your GPA. They don't care. Do you have the degree? Do you have the experience? Do you interview well? And will you train well? Yes, 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 and yes. Okay, you're hired. If you make sense for the role, you're going to be hired. So that 1 C I got in calculus was never going to affect me, was not something I need to be concerned about, but I did panic. I hit the panic button, and I didn't really have anybody in my life to look to or bounce ideas off of or talk about it with, so I panicked, and I switched my major. Immediately, I was like, I gotta get out of this major. I gotta do something else, because if I get a C in calculus 1, like, I'm never going to be able to be an engineer. I'm never going to be able to do all these things, which again, it's not true. There's a lot of things emotionally happening for me at the time. There's a lot of stressors. And plus, it was just your first college semester. I made some mistakes with the way my schedule was made too. I didn't have any easy, like one little easy, like like for me, my psychology, my intro to psychology, or my intro to sociology for my general electives, I didn't have any of those thrown in that semester to make the load easier. So there were mistakes made, but I panicked. I switched my major. And I'm like, so what do I want to do? Like, I want to stick with the medical route, but I don't really know what to do outside of engineering. And I didn't really want to be a nurse. And again, this is like all I know. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll go to medical school. And so I start talking with my friends, and I have a few friends who major in animal nutritional sciences, and they were at the time planning to go to a vet school, and they both recommended, they were like, you can still you could do medical school, you could do whatever type of schooling afterward, but like, just switch over to our major, you'll get the sciences that you need. We'll be in some classes together. They're like, just switch over for now. And like, if I wanted to change my mind, it wasn't the end of the world. And they had a really good advisor, and they were like, yeah, get in with her and you can talk with her and she'll help you make your schedule and everything. And so I switched to animal nutritional sciences. And when I started doing that, my plan was then medical school, because one of my friends who was in that major, their plan was not vet school. Sorry, I misspoke. One of them was planning on vet school at the time. One of them was planning on medical school at the time. And I was like, oh, well, fuck yeah, I'll just go be a doctor. Like, that's medicine. That is a sustainable life and a sustainable job. So I'm like, okay, let me get this major rolling. Let me get into medical school. And so then that's the plan through the rest of my freshman year until sophomore year starts. But basically, with an animal nutritional science major, there's a couple the school is like the School of Agriculture. So there's a couple classes you have to take within that school. And then the rest of it is, of course, everybody takes your general electives. And then you also take the sciences. And that's mostly what you need for a lot of these graduate school programs that are involved in medicine, or even if you want to go get like a doctorate in biology or whatever it is, a lot of it is the sciences. And so with animal nutritional sciences, you have to take your intro to bios, and there's like 2 there, and then you take 2 more like deeper bios, and then you can go as far as you want to, like into the 400s with biologies, and then you take your 2 gen chems, and you take an OChem, you take human anatomy, A&P, so you get a lot of those sciences with it, and then you can kind of do whatever else you want with the schedule. That's why it works for going to medical school. It works for going to vet school. It works for going to PA school where we went. But I didn't know what PAs were, and then at the time. And so again, I'm working towards medical school. But again, I really have no idea what a PA is. I don't know about NPs. I don't know about anything about that, even though that's the providers I've been seeing for most of my like teenage lifestyle or life. And so I go to dinner with my mom and one of her friends who's a nurse, and she goes, "Are you sure you want to do medical school? Like, have you heard of being a PA? Would you want to be a PA?" And starts talking to me all about it. And her name was Ashley. I was like, "Ashley, I have no idea what a PA is. Tell me more." And so she gets into it, and I'm like, I think that might make sense. And then truly in the same week, or maybe the same 2 weeks, another friend of mine who had been in the same major, she starts talking about PA school. And I'm like, oh, this got to be a sign, right? I hear about this 2 times in the same 2-week time span. And I'm really starting to think it makes sense for me as far as what I want for my future and my lifestyle. And I don't really know if I'm fully committed to this medical school idea. And so I'm like, you know what? I can stay in my major. I don't have to do any drastic changes. I think I'm going to head towards this PA school situation. And so now's when we start looking into what does it take to get into PA school. Now, general across the board, they're going to all be relatively the same, but it's very important that once you decide you want to go into PA school, it's just to look at the little niche things each school prefers. Basically, of course, you're going to have all of your bios. I ended up adding on a minor in biology to my major of animal nutritional sciences so I could get into those upper bio classes just to beef up my resume. And I really enjoyed some of those upper levels, like you're taking epigenetics and molecular biology and blah, blah, blah. So I added that, but you really want to look into what is niche to every PA school you might want to go to, because you want to take those biologies, you want to take those chemistries, you have to take human A&P 1 and 2, and those are big core things. A random thing is statistics. I think most of the PA schools I was applying to wanted you to take statistics, so I just took like an online course that WVU was offering. It was super easy, got it done real quick online, and I think that class was because it was online, you could finish it early or something, but it really freed up some of my schedule. So that was one random thing. 2 other random things as far as your classes when applying is human anatomy and physiology. At WVU at the time, you could only take that if you were like an exercise phys major, which I was not. And so I had to go to one of their sister colleges. That way it was included in my tuition, and I didn't spend more money outside of my tuition already to do it. So I took one class there, and then I took one class, the second one at Belmont College, which is like right in St. Clairsville, Ohio. And it was pretty cheap. I could take it over the summer, get it done. So I technically took my human anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 at 2 different schools. Not technically, I took it at 2 different schools. One of the PA schools I was looking at, you had to take your human A&P 1 and 2 at the same school. It was a weird niche requirement. I guess they want to make sure you like had a continuous stream of education, that there wasn't any missing pieces in that. I'm assuming because maybe one human A&P 1 at this school left off here, and so if you go human A&P 2 at this school, you might have missed a chunk or something like that. I'm assuming that is what the concern is there, but it was only one PA school that I saw that did that, but I couldn't apply to it because I took them at 2 different schools. Another thing is your OCHEMs. Some PA schools want you to take OCHEM 1 and 2, or it'll say credits. It'll say how many credits of it. And then some will say OCHEM 3 credits, some will say 6 credits. If it's 3 credits, you can just take 1. If it's 6 credits, you need to take 1 and 2. So WVU offered like just a 1 OCHEM that was like a summary of 1 to 2. I can't really remember the terminology with it, but I ended up doing that so I didn't have to take OCHEM 1 and 2. If I'm being honest, OCHEM was fine, but it was not my favorite thing to do. It was called brief OCHEM, I think. And so there were certain PA schools, again, I couldn't apply to because I didn't take a separate 1 and 2. I took like I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 credits, but a 3 or 4 credit class that was just brief OCHEM. So those were little niche things that didn't work out for certain schools. But again, there's plenty of schools you'll find one that'll work for what you decided to take. So when you do start thinking of PA school, it's important to look at those things, because if you're like diehard, I want to go home, or diehard, I want to go to this state, or diehard, I want to go to this specific college, you're going to want to make sure you have the criteria to go to that college. But so that's kind of the first thing is, what classes do I need to be taking? What major should I be in? A lot of people major in exercise physiology, which you pretty much don't have to worry about thinking what classes you have to take, because it's pretty much a precursor to PA school. You're going to hit all the things you need to with that major. I had kind of changed my mind a few times, and I liked my major. I liked the college I was in. So I was like, I really don't want to switch my major and join a new college and blah, 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 blah. So, but if you are starting out school and you know you want to go to PA school, I'd probably just stick with an exercise phys major. But moving on, another big requirement outside of your classes and grade point averages and schooling is patient care hours. Some schools require 0. Some schools require 1,000 to 2,000. Those ones that have a lot of patient care hours, those are normally people who were nurses before. So of course they have thousands of patient care hours. There's ones that heavily focused towards more so like veterans, and so veterans who have their, like my dad was an OR tech when he was in the Army Reserves, and so he has all these patient care hours from that, or so there's some that are geared more towards that, but there's quite a range of what they're going to require of patient care hours, and this is always changing and something to always keep up to date on. But so when I was in school, I was like, oh shoot, I gotta, because I'm behind the curve already, because I decided a little bit later that I wanted to do this. So I'm like, I gotta start getting patient care hours. So I worked as a nurse's aide. In West Virginia, you do not need to be certified to be a nurse's aide working in hospitals, like on med surg floors. So I didn't get any certification. I just got on-job training, and I worked as a nurse's aide for a while, or some places call them patient care techs. I did that. I think I ended somewhere between, I was getting close to 1,000, but I don't think I quite hit that mark because I graduated early, and so I was moving earlier, moving faster, but it was tough to do. I had to work night shifts during school and then try to get up and go to class the next day after sleeping for an hour or two. It was really hard, but it was definitely worth it just to cram all those in, get them done. It's tough work being an aide. They are so necessary to healthcare, and I thank the people every day who are doing that for their work, because people who are really good patient care techs, nurses aides, certified nurses aides are, for the most part, wonderful human beings doing the Lord's work, because we really need that in healthcare. So again, some of them require nothing, some of them require 1,000, some of them require 2,000. It's just something you got to look at. So I started doing that. If I were to recommend to somebody what maybe a better idea would be, is you could maybe get licensed or certified as an EMT, like just like a basic EMT, and get your hours that way. You could be certified as a nurse's aide, or just work as a nurse's aide, a patient care tech. But I would reserve that working time for your weekends or when you're making your school schedule. See if you can find some open days in that schedule where you can leave to kind of treat that as your working day. So like if you can get a schedule where you're off on Thursdays, perfect. You'll work Thursday and Saturday and get some hours, or Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, get some hours. And then work a lot more during the summers. I only had the opportunity to work for like 1.5 summers as a nurse's aide, because the first summer after school I didn't know I was gonna go to PA school, so I wasn't worried about getting patient care hours. But if you get a lot of them done during the summer, then you'll have less to do during the school year, and you can really focus on your studies and, you know, also enjoying life here and there. That's what I would recommend, is trying to do the bulk of it during the summers. Medical scribing does not count as patient care hours. I know you can do medical scribing. I think like a lot of medical students, people who are going to medical school, will do scribing be a medical scribe for going into med school. But I don't really know all the criteria for medical school. I never really dove that deep into it. But I know a lot of medical students will be a medical scribe. You cannot do that for PA school. It does not count as patient care hours unless somebody's fudging something on your paperwork and signing off on it. I mean, and more power to you if they are, but if the school finds out that doesn't count as patient care hours, it has to be like hands-on patient care hours spent caring for patients, essentially. So what I would recommend is definitely getting those done during the summer, and then trying to open up space in your schedule that you can fit in days to work. That way you don't have to do night shift while you're trying to get school done at the same time, because it was exhausting. And then, so we have school, we have majors, we have patient care hours. Another thing is the entrance exam for PA school is the GRE. It's just general something examination. It's like a Big Daddy ACT is essentially what it is. The scoring of it, I do not exactly remember. But again, I was kind of behind. All of a sudden I was kind of planning on graduating in 3 years rather than 4. It was kind of something that came on suddenly when I realized how many credits I had taken, and that would be an opportunity. So once I realized that was an opportunity, I was like, hell yeah, let me graduate a year early. The sooner I graduate, the sooner I get into PA school, the sooner I graduate PA school, and the sooner I get to work and I save all this money. So my plan was to graduate in 3 years, and so all of a sudden I needed to be applying to school sooner than I thought and take this GRE, graduate record examinations. The individual sections are a smaller score, and then you combine it. So the average for getting into PA school is 300 to 310. So that would be, you're in the 150s to 60s range for your separate sections. I suddenly realized I had to take this test. I signed up for it a week before. I don't do any studying because I'm like, I don't even know how to study for a Big Daddy ACT. I haven't been schooling like that for a while. So I was just like, I'll just take it and see what happens. And I took it and I got right at average. I mean, like I think I was 152 on one half, and I was 150 on the other. So that would have put me at that 302. So I was just at average acceptance for PA schools. And it looks like, according to Google, it's about the same average for acceptance for PA schools. So I mean, I did the bare minimum there. I didn't do anything particularly exceptional, but I was like, F it. I mean, all these things applying to PA school cost money, right? Undergraduate costs money. Your patient care hours won't cost money. You'll make money, but that's besides the point. And then this GRE is going to cost money, and then applying for school is going to cost money. So I was like, you know what? I'm not taking it again. I got average. I don't even know how to study for it, so I'm not sure how to do better. But it's like they have a math section and English section. So I don't really have a whole lot of advice for that. I just ripped the Band-Aid off and went ahead and took the test. And the Lord was on my side that day. But anyways, so that is another portion of applying for PA schools, getting that GRE. At the time in the schools I was looking to, they all required it. So I have the schooling, I have the patient care hours, I have the GRE. What else do I need? I need to start applying for PA school. And so PA school has a system that applies universally to, or well, I don't know about overseas, but across America applies to your PA schools. So that is called CASPA, CASPA, CASPA. I don't honestly know what that stands for, like probably Centralized Application Service for Physician Assistants. CASPA. So this is where you'll start putting in everything. You'll put in your, oh my gosh, what are they called? Like your transcripts. You'll start putting in your transcripts. You'll start putting in your logging your patient care hours. You will, fill out all your personal information. You will put in like on your GRE, when you go to take it, you say like, where is this getting sent and stuff. You'll do that and do your GRE stuff. You will also put in, most PA schools are going to require 3 letters of recommendation. In CASPA, you actually directly put in the people who are going to write your letters of recommendation. You put their information in so they can upload it. The recommendations, I don't know if they're worried about, somebody fudging their own letter of recommendation or whatever, but that's how they get the letters of recommendation. And as far as letters of recommendation, I don't remember who all I got mine from. I know I got one from my advisor. I know I got one from one of my upper level classes in the College of Agriculture. What's it called? Like that last class you take. Everybody has to take one for their major. I don't know. There's like a class that you take at the end of school. Why am I brain farting on this? There's a class that you take at the end of schooling, and it's like you call it your something. But you normally do like papers and projects. It's just like a final course for your major or whatever. That teacher wrote me a letter. And then, I was a student ambassador, which is another thing you want to think of is your involvement with your school volunteer hours. I had volunteer hours through volunteering at a therapeutic horsemanship farm, which was just a really cool opportunity that I had because of being in the College of Agriculture, being an animal nutritional science major. That was an opportunity I had. So I did that. And then I was also a student ambassador, which was just being an ambassador for the college, holding events, recruitment, yada, yada, yada. It was pretty easy, pretty fun gig. 2 of my friends did it. One of them stopped doing it at one point, but then me and my other friend did it for the rest of college, and that got us through. But so those are other things, extracurriculars, involvement, volunteering, etc. But so yeah, the lead person for student ambassadors, they wrote me one too. And so then that all goes in. So you don't have to get 3 separate letters of recommendation for every school you're applying to, because you're going to be applying to a lot. You'll put most of your information into your CASPA, and then you'll pick which schools it's being sent to. And some schools will require a separate application. So that is just important to look. Anytime you're going into applying to it, you basically just Google, like, if we're talking about West Liberty PA school requirements. And West Liberty is one that requires their own separate application. And it's just something stupid. It's something where they can collect an extra fee from you, because a lot of this is about money and all of that, because you're already paying for the application through CASPA, but then some places will have an extra little thing to charge you another $15-$30 or whatever it is. So West Liberty does have one of those, and it's just like a quick form you fill out. It was nothing excessive. I think that was the only school I applied to that had something extra. Everything else was all through CASPA. So basically, I've filled out all this stuff on CASPA. There's like a personality type of quiz. I can't really remember what it was called, that you go through and you fill out in that CASPA. I don't know if that ever affected anything. I never heard anybody ask about it in interviews, but it was just like, how would you react to this and this and this and this? And just like stupid, like, it was kind of like a personality test, like matching you to people. So you take that through CASPA too. But so yeah, you get all your transcripts uploaded, your degrees, your patient care hours, your GRE, your letters of recommendation, your extracurriculars. What was I involved in at my time in school here? For me, again, it was that therapeutic horsemanship farm and student ambassadors. And then I put some volunteer things with nursing homes just because Brian and I both would dress up for... Brian's mom is a director of nursing, Miss Stacy Cusick Campbell, but she is a director of nursing, but we used to dress up for holidays for her residents, and we probably should do that again sometime soon, but we used to do that. So I had those volunteer hours too. But you get all that up into CASPA, and then you pick your schools. When I was picking my schools, I knew I didn't have like this substantial amount of patient care hours. Again, at the time that I was applying, I only maybe had like 600 or 700. By the time I was interviewing for schools, I had closer to 1,000, but they don't know that yet when you're applying. Like, you can put it into your essay, and you'll write an essay too, like, hey, this is my life story and why I want to be a PA and blah, blah, blah. So you'll write one of those too. There's only but so much advice you can give on that. It's your personal story, what motivated you to get into this field, and what you're hoping to do with that career once you earn it. So yeah, but you will write like a personal story or whatever those are called. But again, it all just goes into CASPA. You'll only have to do one for all of the schools that you're applying to. And then, yeah, you will pay like a CASPA application fee, and you'll pay an application fee for every school you added on. So choose wisely depending on where your money's coming from. I did all of this on my own. This was all my own money. So I was limited in where I was going to apply. A lot of people at the time that I was applying, people were applying to 10 plus schools. I wasn't going to have enough money to do that. So I chose West Liberty because it was the cheapest PA school that I could find. And that was, local, like whatever. So I applied to West Liberty, paid that application fee. I had some fever dream choices. Like, I applied to High Point. I applied to 2 schools in North Carolina, High Point and Elon University. I applied to both of those, which were kind of fever dreams. I was really on the cusp as far as like having enough patient care hours, and I graduated with like a 3.79 GPA, so I didn't have like this stellar outstanding GPA. And again, I had that average GRE score. So those ones were kind of fever dreams, but I was like, I have to have like a couple of dreams on here, right? So West Liberty, High Point, which is in North Carolina, Elon University is in North Carolina, Marietta College, Marietta College or Marietta University. I applied there, which is in Ohio. And I think it was because I had enough patient care hours for their program, and I met all the rest of the stuff, and they were pretty local. So I chose them because I was pretty sure I could get in. And then I don't know how I happened upon South University, which is in Savannah, Georgia, but I was just Googling, and then I started looking for ones that don't require patient care hours, because I was like, if I get one that doesn't require it, but I have this many, it'll look good for me, right? So I think that's how I came across South University. I was looking for schools that didn't require any patient care hours. So I applied there. And so the ones I was confident on was like West Liberty, South University, and Marietta. I really chose them based off of what I had to offer as far as their requirements, and what I had that exceeded their requirements. Because if I was exceeding them, as long as I could get that interview, I was like, I can sell them on me. But the North Carolina ones, North Carolina is pretty competitive, and, again, I just, those were a bit more of a dream. I didn't have quite the GPA or the patient care hours. Like, I was barely meeting patient care hour requirements for those schools. So it didn't work out. But I applied to those 5 schools. And I really tried to make sure my eggs were in the right baskets because I needed to get into one of these so I didn't have to redo this whole process, and sent off my application and then waited. And I kept working on patient care hours though, because number one, now we're graduated. I applied probably a couple months after graduation. I graduated in May 2019, a year early with my bachelor's in animal nutritional sciences and a minor in biology. And then I had this rest of the summer to really focus and lock into getting applied and getting into a PA school. And so I think I officially sent my application off by July, I believe. By July. And then we waited, and I kept working on those patient care hours again, because if I didn't get in, I was still going to need them. Some people apply to a few times to PA school. And so, just in case we needed backup plans. And then I started getting calls for interviews. I got my first one for West Liberty. I think I got my next one for Marietta, and then my last one for South University in Savannah, Georgia. Never heard anything back from the North Carolina schools. Again, I probably shouldn't have spent the money on it, but I was like, I could go back to North Carolina, whatever. But so I did that, and I did my West Liberty interview first. Your interviews are going to vary. Some do group interviews. Some do multiple interviews that are all groups. Some do panel interviews. Some do the interviews where they stick you in situations, like you go into one door and this is your situation. How are you going to respond? I didn't have any like that, but I did have a friend who in PA school who did an interview like that. And if we're curious about it, we could have her on to talk about it if she would like to. But I had single interviews, group interviews, and panel interviews. West Lib, their interviews was like 3 students to 2 faculty, and then you had 3 different of those interviews, but you stayed with your 3 people the whole time. And yeah, just like a lot of questions about, why are you here? What do you like to do outside of school? What was the situation where you faced adversity? They love those questions. Why do you think you're right for this? Somebody asked about like, what animal do you think you are? Just a lot of questions. And before my West Liberty interview, I actually got laryngitis. I think it was just like really stress induced. I didn't test positive for anything. And so I was missing quite my voice during it. But I thought I handled the situation well, even though you couldn't hear me super well. I think I spoke well enough, and I was really confident coming out of that interview. Especially I was just confident coming out of that interview, and I came out and told Brian, I was like, I got that one in the bag. I got it in the bag. And then didn't hear anything. And next week, or even it might have been the same week, I went to my Marietta interview, and that interview was pretty intense. There was a lot of people interviewing at the same time. You went into this room with everybody in the room, and they're talking about the schooling and what to look forward to. And then you go off into your interviews. And again, you're in a group of, I think that one, again, we were set off in groups of 3 students. And then we had 2 faculty for one interview, 2 faculty, I think, for another interview. And then you had a panel of faculty. And that one really stressed me out. And I thought I didn't do so good. They asked a bit more intense questions, just like about being a PA, about medicine, about where you wanted to go with the career. And, now looking back, they weren't that intense, but at the time, this was my first real experience interviewing. I had done a mock interview from what WVU offered at school, but it just wasn't. It's just never what the real thing is like. They don't have a panel set up and, terrifying you. But yeah, my Marietta interview was scary, and I cried on my 3-hour drive back, and just in silence, I'm not even playing my music in the car. I'm just sobbing. And then there was a little bit of time before I got my South University interview, because I turned that application in pretty late for what their time frame was. that is also important to note, is PA schools don't all start on the same day of the week or the same month of the year. The South University started in January. The other schools I was applying to started in the summer. So like if I'm applying in 2019, South started January 2020. A lot of the other schools I was applying to started in the summer. So South had a different cutoff date for their application. Your application had to be in before August, I believe, of 2019 to be enrolled in 2020, whereas the other schools were all starting in the summer, so those applications could be in as late as like October, I believe it was. But so I got mine in July, so my application was one of the last ones. So it was a little bit before I did that interview, and there was something special in that Savannah air when I drove down there. I mean, I got there and my dad came with me. I flew to Charlotte, and then me and my dad drove from Charlotte to Savannah to go do the interview. It just felt a little scary to go to Savannah by myself to interview. And Brian would have come if he had been available, but he was playing baseball and working. And so my dad came with me and we drove into Savannah. I was like, Dad, I don't want to seem like a loser and a weirdo, but this feels right. Like the second we drove in, I was like, I want to be here. Like I need to be here. And he was like, I know it's not me applying, but I felt the same way the second we got here. And so that interview, you got to meet with like a lot of the students, and they took us out to like a restaurant the night before the interviews, and it was a 2-day process. You had like introductions the first day, and then the second day was the actual interviews, and they were all one-on-one interviews, but you had 3 separate one-on-one interviews, which I liked a little bit more. I felt like I could be a little bit more confident, a little bit more myself with just one person rather than like a whole panel of 10 people staring at me. And I also had this extra confidence of like this being in Savannah feels right. And, you know, you're talking to other people during this meet and greet, and everybody's terrified just as much as you are to be there. But I get in those interviews and I get my first one. And this was with one of our teachers, Mr. Sheffield, who ended up writing me recommendations for after work and things. And he asked a question. They asked like how you would define a certain word. I can't remember what the word is. They were like, how would you define this? Like, what's your definition? And then he said, how would you apply that, or how have you applied that? Oh, I froze. Guys, I froze. I didn't say a word. And I took a deep breath and I was like, and I had no words. And he was like, it's okay, take your time. And I was like, I'm sorry. I don't know why that's caught me off guard. And then I started rolling with it. And then I was like, okay, I can do this. Just take a deep breath, babe. Like, it's just an interview. This man doesn't have you held at gunpoint. Like, just interview. But so I totally froze. And then we get to talking and blah, blah, blah. And it goes well. And then he's like asking about my family. And I'm asking about his family. And then I'm like, well, I was like, you know what? You could just call me Salami. Like, that's what my little sister calls me, blah, blah, blah. And so then he called me Salami the rest of the interview. And it went excellently afterwards. And when we're wrapping it up, I was like, whew, I'm sorry. I thought you had me there for a minute. He's like, yeah, I thought I had you too. I was worried. And so we laughed about it. And then I did the other interviews and they went really well. And, but yeah, so that was, again, I panicked, but I saved myself, guys. Just throw a little charm in there and you can get through it. Just because you mess up one question during your interview process does not mean you messed up the whole interview. Take a deep breath, apologize, and move on from it. It was embarrassing. Yeah, I was embarrassed. My face was hot. You see how pale my skin is? The visual people who are on YouTube, I turned beet red. Like, I have the stress rash and I came back from it. So it's okay. And so all these interviews are happening. And then I leave the next day, and then I get on a flight from Charlotte the day after. So 2 days after, I land in Pittsburgh. And I have a message, and it's my acceptance to South University. And they kind of do like a rolling admission. They will take everybody. So they have 3 different interviews. Like my best friend from PA school, she was like in the first round of interviews. And then other people I'm in like the last round. And so they're accepting people. and then people are waitlisted. So if you're in the first interview group, you get accepted. If they know they want you, you're accepted. Everybody else that they're not so sure about, waiting list, next interview. If they're sure about you, they accept you, then waiting list, next interview. So I thankfully didn't get on any sort of waiting list. They accepted me. And then I was also hearing back, I got rejected from West Liberty. The interview I was the most confident about how I did. I was rejected, but I didn't know too many people that did not go to West Liberty and got accepted. They accept a lot of their own graduates, and they also have a 3+2 program, which just means if you do a certain major, like the pre-PA program, you'll go directly into the PA school as long as you pass everything. So they have a lot of those students that they have to accept, which that's also something to look into. Are there schools that have, if you know before you're even going to school that you want to go to PA school, look into a 3+2 program, which is just, again, they kind of steamroll you through your undergrad and then you go into the graduate program. You don't have to go through this whole ginormous application process like you regularly would have to. But yeah, so I got accepted to South, and then I got rejected from West Liberty, and then I hadn't heard back from Marietta, and then I was waitlisted at Marietta. And so I was like, well, I don't know how long it takes to find out. So I was like, I'm just going to go to Savannah. Like, I want to go to Savannah, Georgia. So I accepted it and did all the things. And then a week into starting school, because again, Savannah starts so much earlier than any of the other PA schools I applied to. A week into school, it's like January 8th, 9th, I get a call from Marietta, and they're like, oh, we wanted to accept you into the program, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, thanks. But I started school already. And technically the correct thing to do would be to inform a school. Like if you're on a wait list, technically, yes, should I have informed them that, hey, I'm starting school, you can take me off your wait list. Like, I'm not coming to your school. Sure, that's the right thing to do. But anybody else I talked to who were on wait lists, like, they kept themselves on the wait list just to find out if they would have gotten in. Like, it's human nature. We want to know. And I mean, that girl just called the next person on the list, so it wasn't the end of the world. But yeah, so I ended up applying to 5 schools. 2 of them I probably shouldn't have applied to, but I did anyways. I applied to 5 schools, interviewed at 3, and got into 2. In a very rushed and mangled process of trying to get into PA school. There are things I would have done differently, certainly, if I knew from the start that I wanted to go to PA school, but I didn't, and I made it work. So yeah, if you guys have any more specific questions about getting into PA school, about applying to graduate school in general, like what you should do, career choices, figuring out school, just let us know in the comments and we can go through them. Like Gia has a whole different experience applying to graduate schooling and doing an MBA, and Brian has a whole different experience as well, also being like a student athlete. We have other friends who've gone to different graduate programs, medical school, law school, who all have different experiences and advice on how to get it done. But most importantly is just like, look at the list of things you need to do. Check them off one by one as you can. Do the best you can while you're in school. Also have a balance and enjoy your life, because once you start PA school, you're going to be pretty busy. But just take it one step at a time. It's all outlined for you in CASPA. It feels overwhelming when you first open it up. Yeah, feels overwhelming, but yeah, you'll get through it. You'll get through it. It'll all be okay. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into PA school. Guys, I didn't pick out a woman of the week for this week. We could do Emrata. Emily Radajowski. Emrata, we'll do her for woman of the week. She is an author, New York Times bestseller. She is a model. She is like an influencer, an influential person. But something that I've been seeing from her recently is she really takes the time with the platform she has worked for, been given for speaking out on things. And she's been talking about this recent trip that they had everybody go up to like the stratosphere. They sent those 5 or 6 women up to the stratosphere, like Katy Perry, and just really highlighted what didn't make sense about it, because there are people, losing their job at NASA, women losing their job, but they put on this performative act of sending women out into the stratosphere 5 minutes back and forth to show some sort of like stand for feminism and inclusivity. But it really is just it appears to be a form of covering up what is, like what's really going on. And I saw somebody else post like, how many lives could we have saved with the money that it took to send people up there for 5 minutes back and forth? How many lives could we have saved? And how many lives could we have changed with that? And Emrata's just really using her platform to speak up about things like that. And she's, not scared about the repercussions that'll come with it. And I think she is really highlighting like what it is to be a feminist and care about other people and care about women, and what, actually the right thing is to do. It is a really cool thing that was done, but you're taking away from the opportunity for real scientists to go up into space and study. That's really the whole purpose of NASA, and the whole purpose of going up into space is learning new things. And so you just did this grand show of going up into space with, 5 women to make it appear as if we're being really inclusive, when it's not addressing anything. And of course, this is happening right after people just came down from being in space for too long. And my Lord, was the woman who came down. Of course, she looks different because her body has been at 0 gravity for however long. They were up there too long, and then she came back down, and she was ridiculed on the internet for what she looked like after coming back down, after she just gave a portion of her life to studying and researching outer space. Like, she's literally an astronaut, and now she's being ridiculed for that. But now these women this performative situation is being praised on the internet, after somebody was just ridiculed for doing actual science. And yeah, it's just taken away from, what we should really be using that money for, not a performative act, but, the real science. So let's shout out Emrata for highlighting and using her platform for good, and, being a true feminist and truly inclusive. And yeah, so that'll be our Woman of the Week, and that'll be everything for today's episode. Again, let me know if you have any questions, concerns about PA school, what the aftermath of PA school looks like, what the during PA school looks like. We can get into it more. And if you have more specific questions about other grad schooling, again, I have lots of friends and family that we can look out to, or if anybody else has had a different experience with applying to PA school, I'd love to have you on to talk about it. Any other tips and tricks? But yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.